Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Steve. My co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we're talking about the 1993 film Demolition Man, starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes and Sandra Bullock.
Indeed we are.
So, how many times have you seen this film, would you guess, Pete?
About 6, maybe 7.
Okay.
So this came out in the cinema when I just started uni. And growing up, I lived, I know we've talked about this before, but I lived very near to lots of video libraries, but a long way away from the cinema. So I didn't go to the cinema that often. So I just started uni, and I remember on the Tuesday night, I went to see Hard Target. On the Wednesday, I went to see Demolition Man. On the Thursday, I went to see Hard Target. On the Friday, I went to see Demolition Man.
What?
Yes, I went to the cinema 4 nights in a row to see the same films with different people. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, then I bought it on. I think I bought an ex-rental VHS copy of this film.
Okay.
So yeah. What about you?
Probably 3 or 4, I think. I've caught bits of it on television, and I may have paused to watch a favourite scene, but beyond that, really not that often. And I recently rewatched this only a couple of weeks ago now. It's fairly fresh in my head, and there's quite a bit of stuff I'd forgotten.
Me too. So it's directed by a gentleman by the name of Marco Brambilla. Now, he is a video artist who makes video collages. He's got out of film completely now, and he just does like art installations and Kanye West videos.
Okay.
So I've seen one of his other films. There's a film called Excess Baggage starring Alicia Silverstone, which I saw a few years after this. But yeah, he didn't see much. And writing-wise, it's written by a few people I've never heard of. One of the writers is Daniel Waters, though, and he wrote Batman Returns, Heathers, and Hudson Hawk. And it is produced, of course, by the Uber action movie producer Joel Silver.
Of course, Joel Silver. He's worked on some of the best films, over the last 30 years in terms of action films. He's done a lot.
Yeah, I think his name is, or it certainly was. If it was his name on it, you knew it was going to be, let's have a little look. Hudson Hawk again. That could explain things.
Okay. So, for those who haven't seen it, really? Okay. We'll tell you what it's about. In the future, a cop who's played by Sylvester Stallone called John Spartan is frozen for a crime that apparently he committed, and when he was pursuing a criminal called Simon Phoenix, and he apparently killed some innocent people by accident, and the system then at the time is a bit strange. You don't go to prison, you're frozen, not in carbonite, just in kind of ice.
No, in cryostasis for 70. Is he sentenced to 70 years?
I think it's something like that. But equally, Simon Phoenix is also caught, and he's also been put into cryostasis. And then the story jumps forward to the distant future.
Yeah, which isn't that far away at all. We're nearer to the future of this film than we are to the start of the film, which is scary. So yeah, the clean, sanitized world of 2032. I mean, they do a very good job of contrasting the two things, because the 1996 Los Angeles feels like Escape from New York or something like that. It's very kind of the society is pretty much broken down, everything's on fire. It's a bit like 2019 in many ways. And you get Stallone doing his hard guy thing. Wesley Snipes in this film, to me, oozes charisma, and he does from like the first moment you see him on screen. Although he's the bad guy, he's imminently watchable, and he just kind of oozes this kind of charismatic kind of role. But he's not a very nice person, having said that. But they're both very much men of their time. So when they do both, when things change and things jump to the future, it's very much a fish out of water tale.
Yeah. We've got to remember that this 1993 is when Wesley Snipes was during his kind of peak phase, where he was so fit and so good at all of the martial arts and things that he did. And remember, this is only 5 years before he does Blade, which he's kind of mad to think about. I was thinking, Blade was ages and ages ago. I'm like, no, it's only 5 years difference between the two.
Yeah. I think had his life not taken the turn that it took, with like going into kind of smaller movies and then prison, he could have been like the biggest action star, because can't think of anyone else who can actually do martial arts properly like he can.
No.
And who can act properly as well. No disrespect. There's some great martial artists that can kind of act. There's some great actors who can kind of fight.
True.
But he can do both. I've got a lot of trivia about this film, which I'll come to at the end, because I fell down a complete rabbit hole about Demolition Man. Okay. But apparently, because he's so good at, is it Capoeira, the Brazilian martial art that he does? He was so fast they couldn't catch it on camera. So they had to make him slow down, which is why occasionally he looks a little bit jerky. It's because he's actually doing things at like a third of his actual speed.
Right. You're right, though. He is someone that is incredibly competent. I mean, if you look at the three biggest movie stars at that period, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and, of course, Bruce Willis. They're all reasonably good actors. They all can do some, but they're not actually martial artists. And he's got the full package. He looks great. He can move well. You can see that he's incredibly fit. And in this case, he's playing a villain, but obviously he can move between playing villains and heroes, and he can do comedy and he can do drama. He had absolutely everything.
I think the first thing I saw him in was New Jack City, which he was a bad guy in that as well. But I remember thinking this guy was going to be huge, because he's just a really strong screen presence and a really good range as an actor. And then kind of in a way got pigeonholed. I think because of his physicality, he got pigeonholed into these kind of films, whereas actually, you say he could pretty much play anything. Having said that, Tu Wong Fu is very different from this film.
yeah. But he's done all sorts. I was looking at his list. You've got White Men Can't Jump, Passenger 57, which we've covered, Boiling Point, Rising Sun, I've got Demolition Man, and Money Train. I remember watching that back in the day.
I can remember that too.
Murder at 1600, which I was convinced is basically Passenger 57 again. But it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, that's true. US Marshals, I think.
Oh, yes. He was so good in that as well. He's just done. He's done a lot of things, but now he's come back and he's doing different things. Since he's done the Expendables, he recently did Dolomite Is My Name, which is currently on Netflix.
Yes, with Eddie Murphy. Yes,
both of them having a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, which is good, because I saw an ad. Was it for? There's some What We Do in the Shadows TV series, which you keep telling me to watch. I believe he's in that.
He is in one episode briefly, and it's a brilliant, brilliant part that he's in. And that show is one of the funniest I've seen in years. But anyway, he's back with Eddie in Coming to America 2.
Oh, see, I love the first film.
Mm-hmm.
Not a film for this show at all, but I absolutely love that for the first film.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, that's our Wesley Snipes ramble.
So, yes. Well, we should get him on. One of these days.
Sure.
I hope he plays Whistler in the new Blade. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the future, it's interesting then, because you don't see. My recollection of it was that you see Stallone quite quickly in the future, but you don't. It's actually there's about 10, 15 minutes where neither of the two main characters are in it as they set up the world that we're in. It's very sanitized and clean, self-driving cars. Everyone says "be well" when they see each other.
Yep.
Graffiti gets automatically removed by a machine. I put here perky Sandra Bullock and friends. Rob Schneider not being as annoying as he is in Judge Dredd.
True, yeah.
And it's the San Angeles Police Department, isn't it? Because it's kind of
merged, I guess, different areas,
merged.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And I must say, I'd forgotten that the being fined half a credit for swearing happened so quickly, and then they maintain that through the whole film, which I'm impressed with, because you could easily forget. And I'd also forgotten that Sandra Bullock's character is called Huxley, which is named after, I can't remember the name of it, there's a writer whose work this film's inspired by.
Right.
So they've taken his surname.
Huxley.
Yeah, that's right. So it's his surname that they've given to her. But I'd forgotten that she's like an obsessive of the 20th century. So she's got the Chili Peppers poster, Lethal Weapon, also a Joel Silver film, I believe, on the wall. And then, so it's quite clever, actually, that you've kind of seen the 20th century, and then suddenly you meet this. Everyone there is very kind of different than what we've seen, but she's got this slight edge to her that she's obsessed with the past. And then, we get Simon Phoenix's parole hearing, and suddenly he knows the password to his cuffs.
Yeah, which is really weird. So I was thinking about this, that it seemed... So in the future, everything seems to be okay, as we've said, but then you've got the... I like the fact his name's Friendly. Edgar Friendly, played by Dennis Leary, these people who live underground and are causing problems, all the rest of it. And it's all been set up by the man who's created this fantastic new world.
Yeah, Dr. Cocteau.
To kind of create a problem, to then solve it, to get rid of the people underground, because there's no one who can do it. But that kind of points to a massive flaw in his system, not just the fact that there are people who are rebelling, but that he's sanitized everybody so much that they're all completely useless.
Yeah.
So surely that isn't a great future. Surely he should have just tweaked the future rather than burn it all down in this case.
Yeah, I suppose. I think he's done it. So he's just got drones almost, people that are just, again, it feels very like now, people that are just kind of content, but not really thinking, not really challenging authority, and just kind of plodding along, really. But yeah, I guess they're not set up in any way to counter Edgar Friendly and the Scraps. But then, because Phoenix commits a murder, death, kill, the first time in 23 years anyone's been killed, they haven't got a clue what to do. And I'd forgotten that Bill Cobb's character is in the opening as the pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that. So, yeah, he's
the only connection that Spartan has to the past, because then he was a very young man, and now he's a guy who's an old cop just about ready to retire, but he's not I'm too old for this going on. He's just someone who just remembers what it was like. Yeah. And in order to take down Phoenix, you need someone who's just equally as tough from that era, so Spartan's the man. But there's a lot of weird things in this film, like the fact that what they think the future is going to be like is one, and how sanitized everything is, that swearing is permitted. You can't do it. You can't have caffeine, can you? Is it?
Can't have caffeine, can't have meat. I still think it could be true.
Yeah, no meat, no caffeine, no swearing, no violence.
No exchange of bodily fluids.
Yeah, no direct intercourse with or contact with people, no physical contact. They don't high five, they don't shake hands. Yeah. It's very, very unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's not a future I want.
No, not me. And I remember when I saw it twice in the cinema within 3 days, thinking, wow, gosh, this is so like the way they've made it look so futuristic. It's amazing. And now I watch it and go, it doesn't really look that futuristic at all. It's just, you know.
Is that just because of the internet and technology, or is it just that we're more jaded?
I think it's a bit that we're jaded, and also the fact that I guess 26 years has passed, I suppose, so we're nearer to the. But I don't know. It just looks a bit hokey now, and I have very fond memories of this film. That now it feels like a collection of really good scenes and some not very good ones between them. I said I've seen it like 6 or 7 times, but watching it this time with my kind of I have to make notes and think about it hat. It felt like watching a completely different film.
Really?
But I think I think it's because, you know, it's like you remember the really funny moments, and the clever lines and stuff like that, but you almost forget the bits that weave between it. It's almost like the main kind of thing with Nigel Hawthorne's character. I remember the first time I saw it being, oh, really? And now I'm like, well, how the hell did I not see that coming? It feels almost telegraphed watching it now. Yeah, it's I think. I mean, later I'll come on to some of the original casting for this film, because neither of the main leads are the people who were originally offered the parts. But I can't personally picture anyone else other than these two in it, because Sly has the great knack of being able to be so straight and down the line, but also funny. I can't even explain how he does it. And then, say Snipes kind of carries big waves of this film where and then again it's quite nice to see Sly this is kind of almost an ensemble film at times, and then it becomes almost like a partner, like a buddy cop thing almost between him and Huxley. It's
for all the things that they got wrong. You're saying, you know, we're kind of looking at it now and thinking it doesn't look very futuristic. This film was made in the 90s, and there were many occurrences of before this, but self-driving cars.
True.
Still not there. We're still not there. I mean, science fiction has always pictured things as how they'd projected it in the imagination of science fiction writers, whether it's stuff on, Star Trek and Star Wars or any science fiction book, and then you've got this and other films, and some of it becomes a reality. Like when we were in the 90s growing up and watching Star Trek The Next Generation, and someone would say, "Computer, play Beethoven, Symphony 6," and you'd be like, "Stupid, that'll never happen, that's ridiculous." Now, you're smart speaker, remember. You just say it and go, "Play this," and it's like, whoa, so self-driving cars, and then we haven't even got there yet. I know they're testing it, and they keep doing it, but we're not there yet.
They keep doing it and keep crashing them, I believe.
Yes, and it's killed one person or one or two people, but I mean, I do want it. I think it would help, but we're still not there, and that's kind of disappointing for me.
I think I just remember being amazed that Knight Rider could talk to his watch, and like, and it wasn't that much later that you could do that. And now it's like people are paying on paying with their watches.
It's crazy just to kind of look at. So it makes me wonder what things are in science fiction TV shows and films now that we'd look at, and in 20 years' time, other people go, "Of course we've got these things. Don't be ridiculous."
It's a valid point. It is a very valid point.
I don't think swearing will be, a thing. That's.
I don't think. I don't think all restaurants will be Taco Bell.
No.
But of course, in the UK release of that, of course, it was replaced with Pizza Express, I believe.
Really?
Or some versions were, maybe the TV version, but because Taco Bell hadn't at the time really gone any further than North America, they did replace that, I believe.
Because we still got Taco Bell over here, have we?
There's one apparently opening. There's some in London. Okay. I think there are some opening, but it's that's we didn't get self-driving cars. But we finally got Taco Bell. So going back, I guess, a bit to the story. So there was enhance your car. Everyone's wearing kimonos unless they're in the police.
Right.
And funny hats. It actually feels like an 80s music video.
Yeah.
Very kind of Oriental based clothing. Yeah, I think you're right. And so basically, in order to catch this very old-fashioned killer, they need to get someone like him. So the muscle-bound grotesque, as they refer to John Spartan, which I thought was funny. Yeah, so about 20 minutes after we last saw him, they defrost him, and and he's back and ready to find out how to use a futuristic toilet.
Well, yes, there's that, which they don't really explain ever. And also, there's the thing with the fact that there are no weapons. So when the police have these weird kind of shock sticks that are rubbish, and Phoenix has to go to a museum to get guns, and then Spartan also goes to the museum to get guns. It's just kind of that thing I would happily settle for, that there are no guns in the future.
Yeah.
That's one part. That and the self-driving cars, but I would like to see in the future.
I don't particularly want to use seashells instead of toilet roll.
But you don't know what to do, Pete. It'll save paper.
Don't Google it. Don't Google it. There are many pages on the website of people trying to explain how it's done, and with images. Don't do it.
Well, but the thing is, you see, if you want to save the planet, Pete, and reduce your paper consumption,
What about? Okay. I don't know. I do think a genius part of the script is where he starts swearing in order to get loads of pieces of paper to make toilet roll.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the best bits. There's a microchip in all people. I don't think that's far away. You could argue our phones are kind of that already anyway.
Yep.
The other weird thing is that all the old radio stations play old ad jingles, and then when they go somewhere, they go to the restaurant and Dan Cortez is singing Valley of the Jolly Green Giant. When Benjamin Bratt's character is nervous, he starts singing an old advert.
Which sounds weird unless I ask, and I can ask you about some adverts from your childhood and certain songs, and you'll know them straight away.
That's true. I was going to say Our White's Lemonade, but remembering that you're from the Northeast, you didn't get that. I know this because when I worked in radio in the Northeast, I used to do a presentation about old ad music, and I used to play Our White's Lemonade, and everyone said, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Because it never ran in the Northeast.
But I can just say, it's too orangey for crows. What am I talking about?
I'll be your dog.
See? So for those who have no idea what we're talking about, it's Kiora, and a squash-type drink from when we were kids. There's that. There's, there's so many jingles and things. It sounds ridiculous that music has gone and the only thing left are these advert jingles, which is weird, until you kind of poke at your childhood and realise there's a bunch that are just embedded in the back of your brain somewhere.
You've retained for like 40 years.
Yeah.
It's a valid point.
And ho, 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 green giant.
Giant, nice. Nice.
Which is tins of sweet corn, come on.
It is, it's true.
How can they make it interesting?
Yeah.
It's mad, but
it is mad, but yeah.
See, this film's not too far away from the future, Pete.
It's true. I've been listening to Jingle FM today, funnily enough.
Oh, dear. This film has some really batshit moments in. So there's the whole thing of the people living underground who are outsiders and rebels and don't want to conform to the system, led by Dennis Leary's character, Edgar Friendly. The choice of character name just... Anyway.
I think in general, Phoenix, who rises from the flames, Spartan, the names are, three writers, they could have probably come up with some slightly less on-the-nose names.
Yeah.
One of the scraps, according to IMDb, although I couldn't see them in there anywhere, is one of the very early roles for Jack Black.
Really?
Apparently so.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, he's thinking about retiring at the moment.
Is he?
He just turned 50 and he's thinking, I might do a couple more films and then that's about it. But yeah, he's been talking about it. But he's been so popular lately with the Jumanji films.
Yeah.
I suspect if this one does well, and it looks like it will, they'll do a third one. So I'm sure they'll somehow manage to persuade him for several $1 million to come out of semi-retirement.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised.
Wouldn't take much. Anyway. So the people that live underground are... It sounds ridiculous. People who don't want to conform to society and its rules and restrictions, I can get behind that. But when I watched it this time, I just thought... Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. They come up to the surface to steal food, mostly Taco Bell. And yet, they're all down there, somehow living in tiny conditions. That bit was stretching my credibility this time, watching it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think at the time, it almost felt like, it's like RoboCop. It's like this great kind of satire about the 1%. And it's kind of... But then watching it now, it does feel a little bit...
hokey.
I don't know. You just kind of think, well, at any point you could have taken over, or because no one can stop you.
Yep.
Really.
That is a big flaw in the film.
Yeah, it is. You think you're right there.
And they're eating rat, aren't they? At one point.
They are. He has a rat burger.
Yeah. Which there again just sounds weird because the fact that if society is so plentiful and so much stuff and they can go up and steal it, why don't they just do that instead of trying to eat rat?
I think it doesn't help in a way. I think Dennis Leary is great, and this was kind of in his heyday as well. Yeah. And I read again that they gave him a lot more screen time and let him kind of, because a lot of it just sounds like his stand-up.
Right.
The ranty stuff he does about, I want to do this, I want to smoke this, I want to go there, I want to do that, is essentially the same patter that he does on stage.
Oh, right.
So it kind of does, but that in a way takes you out of the film if you know his comedy, because he's kind of playing himself. But I guess his thing is like, well, if I want to eat meat, I should have the right to eat meat. Therefore, but I don't know. I love meat. I'm a massive fan of eating meat. But if the only option is a rat, I'll happily have a vegetarian Taco Bell. Thank you very much. I'm not that. What I do like about his characters, he says about basically don't want people to read, they don't want people to think. Which again, if you look at kind of where the world seems to be heading, you could say this was years ahead of itself. And it does go back to the bit I said earlier, is that what Dr. Cocteau wants is just people just to like sheep, really, just to kind of blindly follow along, and they aren't doing that. But again, watching it now, it feels so on the nose because they're too far that way, and the general people feel like that they've gone too far the other way. But maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the way in a big budget action movie to get that point home, is to make it really, really clear. But it does feel a bit like it lacks nuance, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess the way it's written and with Stallone and Snipes in the lead, you weren't going to get anything Well, you just need to look at the script. You knew that this isn't a serious look at the future, really. I mean, at the time, when we watched it, it looked amazing. It did look super futuristic. It looked really cool. But with an older eye than I'm watching it now, I can see that, with those two guys in the lead and with the script that we had, it is very tongue-in-cheek. It is quite on the nose, and you're not supposed to take it too seriously.
No.
But my 15-year-old self thought it was the best thing ever.
The 19-year-old me was the same. And I was just like, I think this is really funny. And it's like socially aware. I was, And I was
now
like...
Now we go...
quite. Well, I mean, there's some... Huxley's character getting phrases wrong, I remember finding really funny. But again, adult me, you really licked his arse. There's a new shepherd in town I just found really annoying because if she's that much of a fan of the 20th century, in 30 years, I don't think everyone would have forgotten how to speak.
No.
And there's a Schwarzenegger gag. This was during the peak Planet Hollywood kind of. Every Stallone film had to have a Schwarzenegger gag. Every Schwarzenegger film had to have a Stallone gag, but like we meant with True Lies that we talked about before. Tango and Cash did it. So they talk about the Schwarzenegger library, and they talk about how Schwarzenegger was president because the rules were changed that a non-resident someone who wasn't born in the US, which people are still trying to push through actually for that, and they cite Schwarzenegger as the reason. But I also feel a bit like if you're going to take the mickey out of your mate, you're also kind of saying, well, the world was terrible, then Schwarzenegger was president, and off the back of that we became this kind of totalitarian regime. It's not, I'd never thought of that before. It's like, it's not great. It's not great.
But the irony is, of course, that Schwarzenegger went on to become the governor.
I know.
And some would say one of the best governors of California, and he did so much for the environment and the state and all the rest of it. It's like, it's weird how things turn out.
Yeah. And another governor, of course, is in this film, very briefly.
Go on.
Jesse Ventura.
Is he?
Yeah, he's one of the gang that the gang, because Phoenix basically decides, which is another massive flaw in the story, but he decides that he defrosts his old crew, and all those people are kind of not big names, but they're established kind of B-movie people. And Jesse Ventura is one of the people sat around the table, and one of the people that goes on the killing spree.
Yes, of course.
Very briefly.
Of course.
But you get some other bits. You get, illuminate, deluminate. It's very, like you said, Alexi and Siri kind of, voice commands for your lights and things. And then you get my least favourite part of this film.
Go on.
Is when she offers him sex.
Yes. So, the internet wasn't a thing in 1993. It didn't exist. We should point this out for those who aren't old enough to remember. And the idea of sex without someone physically being there, well, that's ridiculous. These days, well, don't type certain phrases into the internet. Yeah. You're not going to get what you think you will. That's all I'll say. So, but the idea of, I don't know, if from thinking about it as an older man, I'm thinking that maybe it was to do with, lust, but also maybe it's to do with disease. Maybe it was to do with problems in society. And he took everything to the extreme, of course, but that was possibly one of the things they were trying to prevent. And that if you want to have a child, doesn't it say you have to apply?
Yeah, I think you have to apply it to be,
Yeah, which sounds ridiculous until you think about certain countries where you're restricted to have only one child. The government kind of encouraged people to only have one child in certain places. So it's weird looking at it now. It's got strange echoes of things that have come to be or already exist in other places, and you go, for all its silliness, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I think for me, the issue wasn't necessarily the fact that it was kind of this virtual sex thing at all. It was more the fact that that's where they ended up. It came out of absolutely nowhere. She's a lot younger than him, to me. And every time I watch this, I forget this scene. And again, maybe as a 19-year-old, I wasn't that bothered because I thought, oh, she's cute. But now it's like, well, it's an older guy. He literally has just been told, he said, oh, what's happened to my family? Oh, your wife is dead. Oh my God, my wife is dead. I've been dreaming for 36 years that she's been tapping on the glass of this frozen tank. And I can't believe my wife is dead. I can't believe my wife is dead. Oh, let's have sex. Without skipping a beat, because and I appreciate there's an element of he's I don't know, I just found it a little bit unsavory. But then Hollywood has a long history of older men and younger women having sex just because it's what the audience wants. So I don't know, I just found it a little bit weird. She kind of hero worshipped him, and it just the scene has got no. And even afterwards, and I appreciate they do kiss at the end because this whole thing about how. Oh, that's what bodily fluids changing are like. It just felt really, weird. Really, really weird to me.
But we should say that this has moved slightly out of the phase where you had look, there's some woman's breasts for no particular reason. We didn't get one of those in this film.
No, if it had been 88, there would have been that.
Yep.
This was in we're much more, now, yes, he'll have sex with a much younger woman as soon as he meets her, but she'll keep her clothes on. Mm-hmm. So, it was baby steps.
Yeah. I mean, Sandra Bullock is very full of pep in this film.
Yes.
Very young, very smiley, very enthusiastic.
She won a Razzie for Worst Actress for this film.
Really?
Which I don't really understand. Because she's playing yes, her character may be annoying, but that's the part she's playing. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's good acting. Although I guess it was one of her first roles, so maybe it was the fact that people just thought she was being herself without knowing what she was really like. I don't know. It's strange. It's a strange thing. This film won lots of awards, but that was the negative one.
Okay. Do you know how well it did at the box office?
I don't imagine it did particularly well because it hasn't had a sequel and no one ever really talks about it. Of the Joel Silver canon, it's kind of that film. I don't. And even with Sly's, it was around like the same time as Cliffhanger, which did really well, and maybe this kind of that overshadowed this. But this is not a film that many people mention to me. But I don't know what the box office was like.
I'm going to try and find out, but it's a weird. What even would you do with a sequel?
It's a good point. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It ends on a thing of, oh look, he's going to improve society, hooray! And then we're going back to where slightly
to find kind of a middle ground in a way, I suppose.
So the budget was $57 million, and it made 159, so 102 profit, which is washing its face, as you would say.
Yeah. Like these days, it's billion on a thing. But yeah, then you'd have thought that would have been okay. But then again, this may be back in the day when they actually were quite confident to make a film, not a film. If this was out now, it'd be like 2 Demolition, 2 Man, 7 or something. I don't know.
Well, just like we rattled off a bunch of those films that Wesley Snipes did, all of them were fairly successful, and yet none of them did sequels. Obviously, when it came to Blade, that was different, but all of those other ones, action films, nothing. No Drop Zone 2, no Money Train 3, none of that.
Yeah.
So different.
And you could argue, I guess, Money Train, although it was there's some magic here between these two actors from White Men Can't Jump. Yeah. So there's an element of Money Train was probably the first kind of slight cash-in, I suppose. But, Yeah, so did you work at the Cocteau actually being the one who upgraded Phoenix in the first place? Again, when I watched it for the first time, I was very shocked. Watching it again, having forgotten a lot, it was kind of telegraphed very early on, I think. But the biggest flaw to me, he's obviously brainwashed Phoenix or put ideas into his head that he can't kill Cocteau himself.
Yep.
So, but they let him release like 10 guys who could. So when they shoot him, you go, yeah, well, obviously that's kind of that's what you would do if you couldn't kill someone. And I don't know why he let him get those people out of cryostasis. It was very odd.
Yeah. There were a few plot holes in this film to say. I think we're viewing it a lot more seriously than you're supposed to. I think you're just supposed to roll with it and go, oh, okay, okay.
True. And I think at the time, I thought this film was hilariously funny, and there still are some very funny moments. And I think the casting is really good. Like, Bill Cobb is always great. Rob Schneider, I know a lot of people don't like him, but he can be good in small measure, and he plays the right kind of role here. Benjamin Bratt was one of those actors around this time. I saw him in a film called Blood In, Blood Out, which I really love.
Right.
And I thought him and Damien Chappell, who was in Under Siege, and I thought he was going to go on to be a big name. He does still appear in stuff, but he never quite did. But he's got this kind of easy charm about him as well. So I think what I do like about it is it's a B-movie premise in many ways, but it's kind of not. It's more of a kind of an actor-y cast in many ways. And Nigel Hawthorne, who apparently didn't get on with Stallone or Snipes, the late Nigel Hawthorne is, a proper, British thespian.
Yep.
In one of the early kind of every villain must be British kind of face, really.
It's true. It's true. So, is there anything else you want to highlight of the film before we do some scores and then you can do some trivia?
I don't know. No, I think. Oh, there's another nice touch which will come into the trivia. They do. There's a fight scene where Huxley basically kills somebody for the first time. I thought they handled that well. Once they get into kind of the climactic scenes, she is willing to shoot somebody, and obviously it shocks her because that hasn't been a thing. But she's becoming more like him, but he's becoming more like her as well, and they meet in the middle, which I think is really good. But it's interesting that he said, "Oh, how did you learn that martial arts?" And she said, "I watched lots of Jackie Chan movies."
Yeah,
which I will come back to in a moment. But yeah.
Okay.
And the film is named after a song by Sting, which they then use a new version of over the credits. So I think they've gone, Sting did some, Sting worked with us on Lethal Weapon songs. He did songs on Lethal Weapon with Eric Clapton. I think, what songs have you written over the years? Roxanne, no, she can't call it Roxanne. There's already a film called Roxanne. Walking on the Moon is not about the moon. Demolition Man. Demolition Man, thank you. Because the Demolition Man name is kind of, yes, it's because he blew things up a bit.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
Very tenuous.
Yeah,
very tenuous.
Yeah. So shall I hit you with the world's largest amount of trivia?
Go on, then.
Okay, so you've got that. So the voice of did you recognise the voice of the computer?
No.
So that's Adrienne Barbeau, who was in Escape from New York.
Yeah.
He wasn't credited, but that was a nod to that film.
Okay.
And the original casting was Jean-Claude Van Damme versus Steven Seagal.
I can see Jean-Claude Van Damme, definitely. Because I haven't seen him in Cyborg and things like that. And other things you go, yeah, I can see him doing it.
So the original plan was they wanted Seagal to be Spartan.
Oh.
And Van Damme to be Phoenix.
Oh, no.
So Van Damme said, no, I want to play Spartan.
Of course.
And I want Seagal to be Phoenix. And Seagal said no, so they were both dropped.
Oh.
So they brought in Sly Stallone, and they hadn't cast the Wesley Snipes role, and Sly Stallone desperately wanted to be Jackie Chan. So they approached Jackie Chan, who turned it down because he didn't want to play a villain.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the role of Huxley was not originally Sandra Bullock either. It was actually Laurie Petty from Point Break and Tank Girl.
Right.
And she was on set for 2 days and then was fired and replaced by the unknown Sandra Bullock.
Ooh, do you know why she was fired?
I don't know.
Okay.
Personality clashes, it said, which could mean a lot of different things.
Yes, okay.
And there was... Obviously, I said there's a longer edit. There's always a longer edit of every film because you have to start with a longer edit to edit it. That's why it's called editing. But the original version, the longer cut, had one of the scraps was Stallone's grown-up daughter that he found. So there's still a scene where he protects this girl, or this young woman, that in the original script and what was shot was his daughter. So the editor, Stuart Baird, was brought in to cut the film down, who did the same thing in quite a lot of other films. So the other final thing I was going to say is... So the reason there are some funnier scenes is because Fred Decker, who's Shane Black's writing partner, who did Monster Squad and the recent Predator film, wrote a lot of Star Trek Enterprise, did the idea for Ricochet. He did uncredited rewrites on the film. And one of the main things he did was he added the 1996 scenes at the start. The original script started with Spartan being defrosted.
Okay.
Which would make no real sense. His argument was, if you don't show Oz, Kansas isn't that special. And I would say I agree, because if you just see a film set in the future... And I don't know, it's part of me that wonders, it's like a reverse Terminator, isn't it? It's like he goes forward in time rather than backward in time, and I wonder if that's an intentional thing for him career-wise. I don't know. But yeah, so there we are. So lots of different things. I read more about the film than probably is healthy, but there we go.
Well, we can see if all of that has, and the many times that you watched it at the cinema when you're younger, and watching it more recently, has fed into your scoring of the film. So... are we ready to give it some scores?
Shut up, you idiots. It's time to give a score. Do it. Do it now.
I think so.
Okay, go on. Given all that trivia, I'll let you go first.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, had we been doing Bags of Action in 1993, despite there was no way we'd have had to post it to people on a CD-R, I guess, back then, pre-internet days,
Yep.
I would have definitely given this a 5 bags. Because I went to see it like 2 days after seeing it. There was a reason, because I thought this is what the future looks like. This is so funny. It's so kind of socially aware. Oh my gosh, I wish all films were like Demolition Man. So that was a long time ago. And I am older. I am more jaded. I have seen more films. I have wider eyes. So my expectations are very different. But I still have like this nostalgic kind of love for this film. I found the opening scenes and the actual end of the film to be quite weak, but there's some really good stuff in the middle. I'm so torn, because part of me wants to give it a 3, but part of me feels very bad if I give it a 3. But then part of me doesn't really think it warrants a 4, and I appreciate that we're not allowed to give half bags because you like to listen to me agonize. But I'm going to be, for the sake of just some of the very funny scenes and the, I think, excellent performances from the main cast, in particular Wesley Snipes, I'm actually going to give it 4 bags of action.
Wow, 4 bags. Okay.
Yeah.
It'd been a number of years since I had seen this last, but I had seen it probably 4 or 5 or 6 times over the years, and I'd caught glimpses and bits of it on TV. I remember Wesley Snipes being very good. I remember Stallone being very good, and the action scenes, I tended to focus on them more than the rest. And so in my mind, there was a lot more action. I'd forgotten some of the comedy bits, the kind of silly bits where they're trying to take him down and they're reading this thing saying, use a firm tone of voice and use the thing or else. And it was a little bit, watching it now, it was just a little bit too far. We've talked about some of the strange echoes of things that they joked about or things that might have come to pass that then did weirdly in our presence. So that was quite interesting from that perspective. But there are some big plot holes. There are a lot of issues. There's some things that I find quite uncomfortable now that we've touched on. I'm not sure if they remade this today, 1, if they would want to, and 2, how you would go about it, because you'd have to really change the story, because they're remaking and rebooting everything these days at the moment. And I thought if they were trying to do this, I'm not sure what they do. I'm not sure what they do, because I wouldn't like to think what the future might be, given that the sterile future they had in this was quite unpleasant. So it was okay, it was fun, but for me it's definitely not a 4-bag action. No way. And I'm going to be generous. This is actually me being generous. I'm going to give it 3 bags of action. I was tempted to give it a 2, but it's a fun film still. I'll give it that. It's entertaining. If you don't focus on it too much, if you just kind of watch it in passing, and you don't try to get more out of it than it's actually delivering, it's good entertainment. So yeah, it's 3 bags from me. Okay. So that'll be it for this episode. We haven't decided what the next film's going to be, so it'll be a surprise.
It will be a surprise for both of us and the audience.
Absolutely, as it should be. But get in touch with us in the usual way. You can email us. You can come onto the Facebook group. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, where we post weekly episodes and 5-minute reviews of films that we've watched. Don't forget to subscribe and like that channel there. But That's it. So, Pete, wrap us up.
Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night.